Today on the podcast, I got to talk to Frieda Draxlir. She became a mom when her baby was born at 32 weeks, and they were in the NICU for 6 months during 2020. She shares about how they were totally uprooted from a small, somewhat mountainous community, and now in the large city of Vancouver, navigating these health concerns without their community. And it's a beautiful, hard journey that she shares of being in the NICU and having a lot of uncertainty, and then to going home and their daughter's still ongoing health concerns as well as needs every single day. She shares about having triggers and anxiety come up and how she worked through these. And then we did talk about how her and her husband did continue to go on flights and road trips and camping and caving after this happened to them. And so it's a really, I would say, incredible story. Frieda does share openly about her Christian faith and how that plays into their story. And I want to say that even if you are not religious at all, I highly encourage you to listen in. This episode is a crazy story of mental resilience and strength and facing the unknowns and what life looked like after that. So even if you may not have a child that is going through an illness or in the NICU, I think we all know someone or are connected to a journey that could be similar to this. And so I encourage you to keep listening and to hear it from Frieda's perspective.
Welcome to Let's Go Outside, a podcast bringing moms together to chat about the raw, unfiltered reality of doing the exploring we love after having kids. No matter your comfort level of adventuring with the little ones, this is a space to have honest conversations about the real struggles of getting out the door with the kiddos. I'm Danica, a mama living in a small mountain town who's totally obsessed with healthy food and taking my kids outside every single day. I professionally guided backpacking trips in the Canadian Rockies, and I'm certified as a Leave No Trace instructor. On the show, you'll hear real experiences from other moms, plus tips on gear, trail snacks, and the best practices in the wilderness. Whether it's hiking, camping, backpacking, skiing, or traveling the world you want to do more of, this is your place to learn, find encouragement, and strip away any comparison. Come embrace both motherhood and the outdoors. Stick around. This is your place. Welcome to the Outdoor Mom Club.
Welcome to the Let's Go Outside podcast. I am super excited to have Frieda Draxlir on the podcast today. We have children very close in age and have been on this motherhood journey together and been able to do some camping together. And we'll maybe share more about it, but we have also done a fun caving journey with our children together. So welcome here, Frieda. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so glad this finally worked out because it's been on my mind for quite a while.
Yeah. Okay. Give us the inside scoop. Share what your life is like these days for people. Give them a little bit of context.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a mom of 3. I have a 5 who's almost 6 in like a week and a half, and a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old, 3.5, and I have a 1-year-old. She just turned 1. I've got 1 boy, 2 girls. My husband and I live in Creston, which, if you don't know, is kind of like located, well, it's in BC in a valley surrounded by mountains. It's beautiful here. I don't want to like hype it up too much because I don't actually want to tell people to move here, but it's beautiful. Danica should move here for sure. It's beautiful. Lots of fruit, lots of growing. Our growing season is amazing. So we do lots of gardening here. We own a little house right in town for right now on like kind of a big double-sized lot. We love it. And yeah.
Yeah. And you guys like to camp, and what are your kind of family activities that you like to do?
Yeah. During the summer, we love to camp. We love to hike. We love to do anything that is new and slightly challenging and fun. And especially we love to do it with people we really love. We're definitely like social adventurers, and we'll go along with anybody who wants to do something. We want to do it too. In the winter, we'll do things, but we definitely are not as big outdoor winter adventurers, mostly because we don't have like a ton of gear. We don't have skis. We have snowshoes, so we go snowshoeing, and we've rented skis before, but because we don't own a lot of that winter stuff, we just don't do as much of it, but we love it and we will do it here and there. Yeah.
And do you think that your life when you got married to Gage is different than it is today, or did you kind of do the same and similar adventures then?
I feel like our life is pretty similar. We definitely don't have quite as much time to do all those same things, and we're a little less spontaneous. We used to like pack up and go on like a 3-day road trip with like an hour's notice, which we don't do anymore. Now we do a little bit more planning with the kids, and we definitely just don't have quite as much time. We have slightly different goals now too. Before, when we were just living in an apartment and renting, we didn't have kids. We would just kind of fill our weekends with whatever and go and hike and road trip. And now we grow our own food and we have a garden and we work hard to save money and we have kind of money goals and places we want to get to. So we definitely have like a slightly shifted goal, but our like mindset around the things and the things we enjoy doing are all the same. And the spontaneity is still there. It just is a little bit held back for benefit of the children.
Totally. I love that. Well, I really wanted to have you on specifically to talk about your NICU journey with Ivy, your oldest. And I think that that could be really encouraging for other moms going through a similar thing or maybe having health concerns with their kids and then also wanting to still figure out how does an adventurous life fit into that and is it still safe to go back to or what does it really look like? And so that's what we wanted to dive in on this podcast episode. So Frieda, do you want to share why don't you share about Ivy?
Yeah. Okay. So Ivy, she's my oldest. She's the one that's almost 6. She was born with a perforated bowel. So about a week before she was born, we flew to Vancouver and we were there for a week. And then she was born. She was born with a perforated bowel. So in utero, her bowel had just disconnected and twisted and perforated and blown. So then once she was born, she went in for surgery and they took out all the dead bowel and reconstructed her whole tract with a stoma bag and an ileostomy. Anyways, yeah. They took out her ileocecal valve and about 40% of her small intestine. And then we were in the NICU for another 2 months before they were able to reconnect it all. So then once she had healed and grown a little bit, she wasn't so small. She was born at 32 weeks, so she was 8 weeks early. And so she was quite little when they first did the initial surgery. And then after 2 months when she was considered like full term, she was 2 months old, but she was full term. Then they went back in and reconstructed it, put it back together. And then she was on a PICC line for nutrients because her stomach and her intestines couldn't like handle the nutrient like load and the need that she had to grow. And so she was on a PICC line.
Do you want to just dumb down a PICC line for me? And I mean, I kind of know because I've been around you, but I still, go for it.
So she had a NG tube. So she was being fed through a tube that went into her nose and into her stomach. And that she was able to get like very limited breast milk through. I pumped through this whole journey. I pumped for just short of 8 months. I pumped enough milk to feed her for 18 months, but I pumped in the span of 8 months. And so she was getting limited amount of milk through her NG tube, all kind of based on her need, but it wasn't enough and she wasn't able to absorb the nutrients out of it. So because she wasn't able to handle enough going into her stomach and pull out the nutrients, they also had her on a PICC line. A PICC line is basically like a semi-permanent IV line that stays in your body. And through it, they can run like broken down nutrients. And so instead of like putting actual food, they're putting like nutrients right into the blood rather than into your stomach. It goes into your bloodstream. And so there's definitely a lot of risks that come with a PICC line because it's all going straight into your blood, kind of like any IV line. But because this is something we went home with and we handled at home, there was more risk for infection. And then so it was in her arm. And it would go up and it would sit right above the heart. And so if infection got into the line, it was able to get to the heart very easily, which is obviously like the worst place for it to be. So a PICC line delivers nutrients into the blood for her body to be able to use without having to use her intestine and stomach to break it down and pull it all out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So then after 2 months, she had the reconnection surgery. She was on a PICC line and an NG tube. And then we spent another 4 months. So a total of 6 months in the hospital. We spent another 4 months just kind of she was growing. They were working on getting her higher in her like NG feeds with the breast milk. And they were working on just kind of healing. And she was also struggling with her breath. She was on oxygen for the first 2 months of all this and then got off just before the surgery and then was back on after the surgery because of some complications that happened with the surgery as well. And then after 6 months, we came home on a PICC line. So we had the PICC line at home. And she ran her bag of nutrients for 16 hours overnight when we first got home. So it was like overnight, but it was really all morning too, because we would hook her up at like 8 or whatever. And then it would run till noon the next morning or the next day. And then she would have a period off the PICC line, and then she would be hooked back up that night.
And you didn't really know
Go ahead.
how long that was going to be, how long she was going to have a PICC line.
Yeah, we didn't know. We definitely, like, when we were in the hospital, they didn't even know if we would be going home on one. But then things didn't go quite as well as they had hoped. When she was about 2 months old, about 2 weeks after her second surgery, she got NEC and she was very sick, and we almost lost her, actually. That was right at the September long weekend at the beginning of September. And so she was really sick, and that seemed to really put her back quite a ways. And so then after that, when we kind of got through that moment and we was like, okay, she is going to live, she is going to come home, she's going to come home on a PICC line now. So that was kind of where we were like not sure until that point. And then we knew that she was going to come home on a PICC line. And then once we were home, we were working on weaning her down. They lower the hours that you're on and the amount that you're getting to try to like shift your body to like get more from food and kind of work on that. But we definitely had more of a timeline of about 8 years. And then even then, they thought if she did get off the PICC line before puberty, that she would very likely go back on over puberty. And so they thought, like, you can kind of probably expect to get off the PICC line sometime in the teenage years.
Wow.
Maybe like 8 or 9, but like likely could be as long as teenage years. She is now off the PICC line. She got off when she was 3.5. So that's quite wonderful. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, that's been wonderful. But we had her on the PICC line at home for 3 years.
Wow. So that's a lot. The fact that you were in the NICU for 6 months, the fact that it was your first baby, she was born at 32 weeks, the fact that it was COVID 2020, right? Like,
yeah, COVID really did affect this hugely and just made it so much worse. Like, just in so many ways.
mm-hmm. Like just the lack of support that you were able to get. I remember we were able to visit you, I think, in August, and we met out in a park, and Gage was like going out there doing frisbee golf just to like release stress and get out of the hospital, and but we weren't able to meet Ivy, and yeah, that was just such a crazy period because we also had Koa at that point, and you saw Koa with us, and yeah, wow, it was just, I'm just remembering back to that right now. But in that season, when you were in the hospital, when you were in the Ronald McDonald House, I think, for most of it in Vancouver, what kind of got you through? What were the things in that season that were helpful to get through that season?
Boy, yeah. What was helpful to get through that season? There's a lot of little things. There's a lot of big things. I'll go through some little things we did that seem so insignificant. But honestly, like when I look back, I'm like, yeah, that was really actually a big thing for us. So one of the things we did was Gage and I decided not to ever take the elevator. So we always took the stairs, and the NICU was only on the second floor, so it wasn't really a big deal. And we didn't really think about it. We're just like, let's just take the stairs. And then when she, after 3 months, moved into the PICU for the next 3 months, it was on the 6th floor. And so then we were going up, well, it's 12 flights of stairs every single day, every time I want to get coffee, every time I need to run back to the Ronald McDonald House. And as much as like it seemed insignificant at the time, just that commitment between each other where we're like, yeah, we're not taking the elevator, it really helped because I think it's just the exercise or just like the movement of your body. We spent so much time in this tiny little room, sitting on the bed or standing beside Ivy's little crib, just like not really doing a whole lot and not being able to go for walks with her because she was hooked up to poles and like there wasn't a whole lot of like freedom to like take her anywhere. She couldn't leave the hospital for like 4 months. She couldn't even leave her room for 5 months almost. Anyways, when she had a head PICC line, she couldn't leave her room or like the floor. Like we couldn't take her down. So we would walk the floor with her in like a little bed, but like they wouldn't let us like do a whole lot with her. But anyway, so taking the stairs was like actually a big one for us. Reading the Bible. We did a lot of Bible reading, listening to podcasts, listening to sermons. I have a video when she was like 3 days old and I'm listening to this sermon like beside her bed with my Bible beside her. And I just remember being like, this is so important for you. But then in the end, I think it's actually just so important for me that I was doing that. So that was great. Definitely helped. Daily exercise. I was pumping a lot, which kind of held me down, but Gage was able to leave a lot more. And he would go disc golfing. He would go to the park and go for walks and go disc golfing. And that was good for him to kind of get out. I'm just
laughing at, sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at all the discs he found in the pond and then got itchy legs from finding them in the pond.
Yeah, the first time he went in, he got duck itch and we didn't know what it was. And it was just these sores all over his legs and arms. And then he like found out what it was and realized he needed to be washing like immediately as soon as he got out of the pond. He needed to like hose off. But the first time he went in, after he got all these sores, he was rubbing himself down with like alcohol because we had like rubbing alcohol in the hospital rooms. And so he was like rubbing these sores with rubbing alcohol, trying to get rid of them. And he was just like moaning in pain. And I was like, oh no. Anyways,
It's like small town mountain boy stuck in Vancouver trying to have freedom and process life. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Vancouver was wild for us. Another thing we didn't do it a whole lot the first couple months because nobody could be in the hospital with Ivy. So nobody could like watch her while we went out together. But we did go out a few times together. And like when she was napping and we knew she'd be napping for a couple hours or something, we'd go out and we'd get like some kind of food or something. That was kind of fun. It just a little break from the hospital was so important for us. Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to do when we were there. It was like we were all in survival mode. It wasn't kind of like, let's take baths and have bath bombs and relax and play music and have candles. Like it just wasn't like that. It was very just like survive this horrible moment and take the stairs and read the Bible and try not to die.
And were you connecting, or did you have community with like the staff there? Was there continuity, or with other parents going through similar things, or just things with their children?
That was one of the things that was really hard about COVID. Before we were there, while we were there, we found out that before kind of COVID had happened, they had like parent groups, like every, one night a week, all the parents of the NICU, different wards, because there's different like NICU groups, they would all meet together and hang out. None of that was happening. At the Ronald McDonald House, they used to have like volunteers come in and do meals for people. None of that was happening. They used to have like all sorts of stuff. They even would have people come in and just hold your baby for you so that you could go out and do stuff and feel like your baby was being taken care of. They didn't have anything like that happening. They didn't have any like baby groups for the PICU when like she got a little older. Nothing like that was happening. So I don't feel like we had like a whole lot of connection with anybody. People kind of kept to themselves. And I think a lot of people were afraid because our babies were so vulnerable. I think a lot of people were afraid of, what could happen. And so people kept to themselves. There wasn't a whole lot of support. My husband's family is all from the States. At the time, one of his sisters was living in Canada, but the rest were all in the States. So they weren't able to come up and be with us. My family was going through a difficult time way out in Ontario, so they weren't able to come out and be with us. And even if they could, like my mom did come out and visit us, but it was so hard because she couldn't come in. And so if she was there for a week, I remember the first time she came, I was so thankful she was there for the first couple days. And then I kind of said to her, like, I love that you're here. It's so painful for me because every time you're here, I just want to be with you, but then I'm away from Ivy. And when I'm with Ivy, then I'm away from you and you've spent all this money to be here and I want to be with you. And she totally understood, like no guilt there. She was like, yep, I get it. Anyways, we had a great like week-long or 4-day visit or however long it was. And then she went home and then she came back when Ivy actually got really sick, had NEC, and did almost die. So the hospital actually allowed her to come into the hospital. So she came back during that and stayed for like 3 days while she was able to be in the hospital. But it was really hard to have support and have people come and visit as much as it was amazing because of that kind of inability to have all of your loved ones together and having to like leave Ivy to be with others.
Okay. I have 2 questions for you from that. Let's start with number 1 is if people know friends or family with maybe a sick kid or a sick baby, what was the most helpful for you? Like if you were to give us words of wisdom.
I love this question. I've actually gotten this question so many times because people will message me and be like, my friend's in the NICU with her baby and like, what can I do? What can I do? So for me, I didn't have any other kids. I think if I had other kids, just support in the home, meals, taking care of my kids, bringing them places, loving on them, that would have been just huge. But I didn't have any other kids and my husband and I were together out in Vancouver. Honestly, it sounds kind of lame, but the biggest support that we received was money. People would send us money and it would like relieve stress and be like, yep, Gage can stay with me. That is like the number one need I had was for Gage to be there. And so people sending us money was like, Kate, Gage can stay. And then we didn't have to think about food. We would buy food. We'd buy like snacks at the grocery store and not even like, I was buying beef jerky. I never buy beef jerky. That stuff is so expensive. But I was able to like buy beef jerky and just eat that during the day. And there was no stress about money. And for me, and maybe I'm just like a money kind of focused person, but for me, that was huge. And people would send us gift cards, like not just money, but like gift cards to restaurants, gift cards to Starbucks. We had a Starbucks in the hospital and I'd go down there on my little, I always called it, what did I call it? Like my little siesta or something. And once a day, I would walk down to the coffee shop all by myself and it would just be like my moment to just like breathe. And I would do it every single day. And it was such a good little reset. And I didn't even think like, I don't know, it was just so nice to have that kind of support. People sent us a lot of letters and cards and just knowing that people were following us and with us was so wonderful. I think the first couple weeks, everybody is involved. But when you receive mail like 4 months in, you're like, wow, you're still thinking about me. Thank you. I'm still over here dying, but thank you. Like it's so wonderful to know people are like invested and with you. And so that like receiving mail, 4 months down the line. And then people did some really practical stuff for us. Somebody bought us a freezer, a massive, huge freezer unit, and then it didn't come in soon enough. So they just gave us their brand new freezer unit that they had for all my breast milk. And then they like brought it to the place we needed it to be. And then someone else drove all our breast milk out from Vancouver to Creston before we got there because we didn't know how we were going to get that to like Creston. We had, with Ivy with us, we were nervous that it would take us a couple days and like things might start thawing or something. So somebody drove it all the way out there in one go for us. Yeah, there was just a lot of practical help in that way too, which was so wonderful. That's all I got.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Good.
It's so hard to help people when they're going through that, but I think just prayer for them, I think is, that's another thing. I had my like Instagram and my Facebook going a lot. And so I was able to just kind of like bleh onto that because I didn't have a lot of people like around me to talk to and chat with, but I would kind of put it out there. And I just knew so many people were praying. And then when we got home from the NICU, people would like meet Ivy and be like, this is Ivy. We've been praying for her for like this whole time you've been in the hospital, like 6 months every single day. And I'd be like, wow, like that's amazing to hear that. It's so encouraging. And prayer is just so powerful. So I think that is also just such a wonderful thing you can do. As it seems like if you're like, oh, I'll pray for you. But if you actually pray for them, that is such a wonderful thing to do for somebody who's struggling.
That's so good. And to a mom that has a sick baby or child in the NICU, do you have words of wisdom or encouragement?
Sort of. I don't know. This one is so hard. I think I'll tell you 2 things. One thing my social worker said to me, I know that this has been really hard for you, but just be aware that the next 2 years, it was the day I was leaving the hospital. I was so excited to go home. I was so happy. I was like, yes, life is going to be so good this point on. She said, I know this has been really hard for you. She's just like, just be aware the next 2 years are going to be worse. And I was like, what are you talking about? They can't be worse than this. And she's like, they're going to be really hard, Frieda. And I was just like, really? And she was like, yes. And I think hearing that, like, it wasn't discouraging. It was kind of like, interesting. Okay. And then the next 2 years were so hard on me. And then it was kind of like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is normal. Like, I'm not just like wallowing. I'm actually processing. And basically what had kind of happened was we had gone through like fight or flight and we were like in survival mode and there was no processing happening. And then 2 years, once we got home, the 2 years after that, I processed everything. I had nightmares like crazy for, 3 years. I had so much like flashbacks and I hate the word triggered, but like things would happen and it would completely trigger memories, feelings, emotions that brought me right back to moments of in the NICU. And that was my body processing and dealing with all that trauma. And I think I wasn't aware of that or that would even happen. I was just really kind of the thought that like, now I'm home, everything's going to be better. And then having her say that to me just really kind of freed me to be like, it's okay to feel this way. And I'm just processing and I'm not crazy. And this is okay and good. And I'm going to be better at the end of this when I get through it. Yeah. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that really kept me going, and I don't know if this is encouraging to anybody else, but it was really encouraging to me. I just remember I would think about the people in my life that I really respected as moms, some of the older women that have raised children or are still raising children that I really just admire and want to be more like. And they've all gone through hard things, like really, really hard things. And so I just remember thinking to myself, like, Lord, help this to refine me. Help this to glorify you. Help this to shape me to be a mom that like raises children that glorify you. Because really in the end, I remember like one time I was walking back between the hospital and the NICU the NICU and the Ronald McDonald House. And I remember thinking like, if this is what it has to take for me to be the kind of mom I want to be a mom that glorifies you, to be a mom that raises children who have real faith, who love the Lord, then good. Okay. Like I can do this. Like I can't do this, but you'll be with me and you'll shape me and you'll grow me through this. And in the end, who I'm going to be after all this is going to be far better because this is the Lord's will for my life. And so like that kind of thought process, I feel like was really encouraging to me because it didn't feel so pointless. I think some of the suffering felt kind of like, just like, why me? Why do I have to go through this? Like all my other friends around me are having babies and I could get stuck in that and be like, they're all having babies and they're all healthy and they all have their babies and they, all this stuff as anybody can do when they're going through less worse things and much, much worse things. You can really get stuck in that. And so just reminding myself like, God knew this was going to happen before it did. God is with me in this moment. God is shaping me through these things. There's purpose in this. If I continue to pray and like give my life to him and, give my sorrow to him and give my daughter to him, there will be beauty that comes out of this and there will be refinement and it will be good. So that was really encouraging to me. I remember thinking that lots in my head. If this is what it takes, Frieda, you want to be a God mom that glorifies God. You want to, and just, I think because I have like goals and I'll work hard for things and I'll grind when I need to grind. And so thinking like, this is one of these moments, Frieda, like this is shaping you. This is doing something, felt more purposeful. Yeah. So for me, that was encouraging and helpful to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Mamas, if you've been around here for a while, you know I have a soft spot for brands that help us get outside more often, even when life feels chaotic. Wadler is one of those brands I've always admired. I'm super on board with their mission, empowering mamas to stay connected with nature in every season of motherhood. And when we're warm and comfortable, everything gets easier. Getting out the door, being present, and actually enjoying all the moments with our kids. Their All Phases fleece is smart and totally intentionally designed to be in your closet for years to come. It's made specifically for motherhood and designed to be fit before, during, and after pregnancy, nursing, and postpartum. The nursing access is subtle and genuinely life-changing for when you're feeding your baby mid-hike perched on a log. And the side zippers adapt to your growing belly. If you've been eyeing it, consider this your nudge. Wadler is offering 15% off with the code Let's Go Outside 15. Check out the All Phases fleece and let it support you in getting outside and connecting with what matters most in every season. If you are into making healthy homemade snacks, I wanted to let you know that I have a huge library of homemade muffin recipes. They're all healthy. My goal is to make them nutrient dense with things like fruit, high in protein, whole wheat flour, low in sugar, no dairy. I mean, whatever you're looking for, it's there. The goal is that it won't break the bank and that you can actually find these ingredients, most being in your house. So go to besidethemountain.com/muffins and you'll find all of my recipes. My favorites are the gingerbread pumpkin muffin, the whole wheat apple muffins with banana, and the blender orange muffins. You're going to love them.
What was life like when you got home in terms of taking care of Ivy? Or, I mean, you did share a little bit on the emotional side and working through that. I mean, you can share more about that if you want to, but what was it like going home?
Yeah, so she was on the PICC line when we first got home for 16 hours and then kind of over time, like weaned. I remember, I think she was, oh boy, wow, I'm forgetting. I think she was like 2. Yeah, I think she was just 2 years old when we got our first night off the PICC line. So that was kind of like part of the weaning process is that, you get down to a certain amount of hours, like I think 10 hours at night. And then the next step is to take a night off. Because you could continue to just go down, but it's so helpful to take a night off. If you don't know much about a PICC line, it's kind of a sterile procedure to hook up. So Gage would, sanitize the tray, sanitize his hands. Everything is sterile. So as you're opening packages, you're not touching anything that touches stuff that's going to touch the PICC line to enter. So, you open the saline and you just drop it on the tray by opening the plastic. Don't touch the saline. Stuff like that. You're prepping. And it would take him, it honestly wouldn't take him that long. He did it every single night for me. I never did it unless I went away with the kids. I went away once with Ivy for 2 weeks to Hamilton and I had to do it those whole 2 weeks. But other than that, he did it all for me. It definitely brought up some like stress. And then it would take me like 3 hours or 4 hours to go to bed that night if I did the PICC line hookup. Mm-hmm. And so he took that over for me. He would just play his show and he would just do the whole thing. But
how long did that take him?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was like when we first started, I think it was like 30 minutes, but then it got down to like maybe 15 or 20. Okay. And you pull out the bag ahead of time to warm it up. And then you have to inject vitamins into the one side with a needle. You draw out the vitamins from the vial and inject it into the bag. And then you're hooking up different tubing, unclamping everything, hooking it to the pump, hooking it to her arm. You sanitize, you clean. And then after you've cleaned it, you have to hold the PICC line. So then nothing can touch it that whole time. Like no dogs running around, no sneezing, and then you're like hooking it up. Otherwise you start over. Yeah. So it's just like you're trying to be as sterile as possible and you just don't want any infections. Anytime she got a fever, we'd have to go to the hospital and get that all checked. Oftentimes, if she had a fever that lasted more than 2 minutes, basically if I got a fever reading that was like sort of high, if like 10 minutes later I got another one, we'd go to the hospital. We had to. And then they would do blood draws and we'd be in the hospital for however long it took to get the blood draw back. And then once they knew that it was an infection, then we were in the hospital admitted. And if it wasn't an infection, then we could go home. So that was a big part of our life was just, I mean, kids get sick. Think about how many times your kid has been sick, like under the age of 3 with a fever. Like it happens a lot. So we were often in the hospital. We had a couple different malfunctions with the PICC line. The PICC line would break and we would have to drive all the way to Vancouver. There's nowhere else that will fix the PICC line. Calgary, because we weren't set up with Calgary, we actually needed to go to Vancouver for most of our care. That's who we were set up with, and our team and stuff was out there. So we flew to Vancouver twice because of PICC line breaks. We drove a couple times because of PICC line breaks.
And that's like a 7-hour drive, right?
Yeah, it would take us about 10 hours.
10 hours. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I think it says like 8 hours and 50 minutes, but it always took us 10 hours, like very consistently. And we couldn't go through the States because of COVID. Yeah. So we were always going through the mountain passes and sometimes in the winter. And it was interesting because, you know, you can say it all like this and you're like, yeah, okay. So the PICC line would break, blah, blah, blah. But the way it actually interrupted our life and affected our life was huge because all of a sudden, you know, we had rented an excavator for the week. We had spent however much money it costed. And then that next morning,
to do renovations on your house is what you mean?
Yeah, to do renovations on our yard and our house. And then the next morning, her PICC line broke. So off we went. And we emailed the guy, oh, can we, you know, reschedule our rental? And of course, he was lovely. But it was stuff like that. Or, you know, I had a flight booked to Hamilton to visit my family. And the week before, we had to go to the hospital because of an infection. And then she ended up losing her line and got a whole new line put in. And it was all kind of touch and go because of how the hospital system works. And she's not emergent unless she's like, anyways, all these things. So we didn't know if we were even going to get back before my flight left on Monday night. But I ended up getting back on Saturday because she got her new PICC line on Friday. And then Monday, it was the night before I was flying out. So it was Sunday night and I was flying out Monday morning. Sunday night, she pulled her line out. So back off to Vancouver we went, canceled my flights, and I couldn't fly home to Hamilton. So it was just stuff like that where like, it was just so, it just like your whole life was just completely at the mercy of my 3-year-old potentially pulling on her line or wrecking it or, you know, all these things that can go wrong with this thing that was so serious. So you really did need to take it serious. But yeah, so it really affected kind of the flow of our life and how we did things. But in some ways it didn't. Some ways we kept chugging along.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's wild. It's just your life is on pause completely. And this is the one thing that we just focus on right now in this moment. And you have to. And yeah, wow. And you didn't know an end to it also, right? Which I think is tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. Had I been able to look back and been like, oh, you're only going to have to do this for 3 years. It was like, all right. But because it was like, this is the next, you know, potentially 15 years. That's what we were being told, 8 to 15 years. So it was kind of like, wow, okay, how do we continue to live life and be normal and also, you know, be good parents and make this a priority and do the right thing and take care of her PICC line. And yeah, so that was definitely a challenge.
Before we jump into kind of how you continued to go back to the adventures that you guys loved, do you want to share kind of how her PICC line ended up coming out at way earlier, or like how did you get to the point where you're at now?
Yeah, I love this story. And if I cry, I'm sorry, but it is just so amazing. So basically what happened was she had her PICC line in and she had this infection looking situation happening on the outside of the PICC line, which we had never dealt with yet before. And so we were continuing to do dressing changes like we were supposed to. And it was just not really healing. And it was bubbling right underneath the skin, like kind of where the PICC line went into the vein. And so they ultrasounded it. Anyways, it all came down. She had an infection. And so they were going to try to replace the line. And we were supposed to be flying out to Hamilton for Christmas. So my family's out in Hamilton. We were supposed to fly to Hamilton for Christmas. And we had been working with this infection situation for like a really long time. And she also had a blood clot. Oh, yeah, that's right. She had a blood clot situation going on as well in the line. So that was also a huge concern. And so they ended up pulling the line. And the night before they pulled the line, our elders came together and they actually anointed her with oil and prayed over her. I've never had that happen. Like I've never done that before. But it says in the Bible to do this. And so they were like, you know what? We're going to do this. And yeah. And I was like, okay. Sure. So we went to their house and they anointed her with oil and they prayed for her the night before they were supposed to pull her PICC line. Wow. Then they pulled her PICC line. And the whole point to pull the PICC line was just like, take it out. We can't have this blood clot situation going. We can't have this infection thing going. So they pulled the PICC line out, which they could do in Creston. They were able to manage that all between the Vancouver team kind of going over it with the Creston team. They were able to pull the PICC line in Creston, but then we needed to go to Vancouver to get a new line. About 2 months before this all happened, we actually had our doctor that had been following Ivy for 3 years retire. She was a wonderful doctor, more by the book, and just had known Ivy better and had kind of been following her. And so she had just retired and we had just gotten a new doctor. That summer, I keep jumping around a bit, but there's so many details. That past summer, she had actually come off the line because of an infection, or it had broke, I forget. And she had come off the line. And while she was off the line waiting for a new PICC line, because she kept getting bumped for more emergent PICC lines, we waited 2 weeks in Vancouver waiting for a PICC line, and she lost a whole ton of weight. And so that was kind of a good trial for the team to be like, okay, she's not ready to come off like at all. Her body did not keep up. It did not want to eat. It like she was just really struggling, lost all this weight. And that was only like, that was that summer. So 4 months before this was all going down.
Wait,
so then
say what year this was? If she was born in 2020, this was
2023, I think.
okay.
Yeah. Or 2022. Now I'm forgetting. Anyways, yeah. So then that was that summer. So then in December, they pulled the PICC line and they put her on blood thinners. So we were having to give her a shot in her leg every day or twice a day. Gage was doing that for me because, again, I was struggling. So he was doing that and she was getting blood thinners, and they pulled her line 2 days before we were supposed to fly to Hamilton for Christmas. And I called the team and I said, look, we're supposed to fly out like right away. And if we go to Vancouver, we're not going to be able to get on our flights. And we're going to lose all this money, and we can't afford this, and we can't afford to fly out later. Like, what are your thoughts on potentially just like waiting? We're only in Hamilton for 2 weeks, no more 2 weeks. She's been off for 2 weeks before. She lost a ton of weight, but you know, it was still safe. Like, it was still like, what are your thoughts? And they were like, we can try it. Like, there's lots of good medical care out there. Like, let's try. And we were like, okay. So we got on our plane and we flew with just the blood thinners and no PICC line stuff, which was crazy to us. And we were obviously very much so trusting the Lord in this process, because as anybody with a medical child or stuff like this knows, this is like terrifying. So we were like, okay, like we're trusting the Lord. Here we go. So we went to Hamilton, and Ivy was waking up in the night to eat. She was starving, but that was actually like a really good sign. So that past summer when she had been off the line, she wasn't waking up in the night to eat. She was just losing weight. Like, she just had no interest in eating. She wasn't hungry, but she was just losing all this weight. But now, Christmas, she was eating like crazy. She was waking up at like 3 a.m, eating a full entire supper, even sometimes 2 in a night. Like every 3 hours, she was waking up, eating food. We were like, this is insane. Like, this isn't really sustainable, but also like, what has changed? This is crazy. And then, you know, we hadn't even had the thought she might actually come off the PICC line. It was just, can we make it through 2 weeks so that she can get on her PICC line again? Can we just get that far? Like, just 2 weeks, Lord, please just sustain her for 2 weeks. That's what we were praying. And when the elders in our church had anointed her with oil and prayed for her, it was like, please heal Ivy. But it was, in my mind, it was just like, please heal this situation she's in, this blood clot and infection in her line. I wasn't even thinking. I mean, I had been praying for so long, heal Ivy, my whole, 3 years with her. And I wasn't even thinking heal her for good. Like, my brain was just, I had lost that, like, I don't know, not like hope that the Lord could do it, but it was like, I'd prayed that so many times. I wasn't like expecting like this big healing. But anyways, so when a couple days into being in Hamilton, she's eating like crazy. We were like, this is crazy. Like, she's not going to lose. There's no way she's going to lose weight. She's eating like tons. And then Gage just kind of had this thought, like, maybe she won't go back on the PICC line. And he kind of shared it with me. And I was kind of like, no, but I was kind of like, maybe. And then Gage was like, but like the elders did pray for her. Like, we shouldn't like, cast that off and be like, yeah, they prayed, but like, whatever. Like, there's power in prayer. And I was like, yeah, that's true. You're right. Like, we'll see. Like, I don't know. Anyways, and then about a week and a half after being in Hamilton, we contacted the team. We had been weighing her, of course, like lots. And we contacted the team and we were like, she's not losing weight. She's doing amazing. Like, can you please let her stay off the PICC line and not book us for a PICC line until she's actually losing weight? If she starts losing weight again, we'll come. We promise. But, until then, can you allow us to just like sit and see what happens? Like, this is how much she's eating. She's going crazy with food. And they were like, yeah. Which I love my old doctor so much, actually, but I really don't think that other doctor would have said yes to this. I don't know. But anyways, so this new doctor she hadn't been with us that past summer when Ivy did lose all that weight. She was totally new. She was like, sure. We were like, Kate, and we ran with it. And we were so excited, and she wasn't losing any weight. We got home from Hamilton. We were home for a couple of days. We were so stoked, and we were like, this is it. She might stay off the PICC line. And then she got strep throat. We all had gotten strep throat. And then I think she got strep throat, and she was so sick. and she lost so much weight, and she was like skin and bones, and it was so terrifying and sickening, and I hate even talking about it. And in that moment, I was kind of like, oh man, like the PICC line would have been really helpful right now. And so I was kind of like, Lord, like why? Like what is this timing? Like what is happening here? And we ended up taking her to the hospital to get hydration because with short gut, you often get dehydrated. And so that was one of her issues when she got sick was she got dehydrated. And because she wasn't on the PICC line, we couldn't give her fluids the same way we used to be able to. And so we went to the hospital and put her on an IV for a day. And then we came home and she was recovering and we called the team because we were having like every couple days calls with them. And we said, she's lost all this weight. She's been really sick. And they were like, well, I mean, if she's had strep throat, any kid would lose weight. And we were like, really?
Wow.
And they were like, yep. And we were like, okay, so do we have to get a PICC line? And they were like, well, let's just see if she can recover it. They said like, if she can gain it all back, great. But if she can't, yes, let's get her on a PICC line. Like, we're calling every couple of days. We're weighing her. Like, it wasn't like this, terrible thing. It was like, let's just really monitor and stay on top of it. But yeah, like if she can, let's give her some time to try to gain it back. And so then we just kept praying. And over the course of the next like 3 weeks, she gained all the weight back, plus a little bit more, which was pretty exciting. And she's never been back on a PICC line since. And it was that night before they pulled the PICC line that they anointed her with oil and prayed for her. And then they pulled the PICC line and she was healed. I really believe she was healed. She has not had any of the same kind of needs for her PICC line since that day. And it's just so funny because it really caught me off guard. And it was like, I was so not expecting it to be that moment that was the last time she was ever on a PICC line, but it was. It was pretty amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So crazy how that
To
happened.
God be the glory for that one. That was incredible.
That is truly a miracle,
Yeah, it really was. It was such a wonderful experience.
And now she's just such a cool, like, kid, like such a beautiful, you would not know when you met her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
she's not a chubby kid, but she is just so healthy and beautiful. And she's got a heart for the Lord. Like, I mean, she just loves the Lord and has such a tender soul and heart for others that are hurting. She's like wise beyond her years with those kinds of things. I think she's just got an amazing story. And I think she's just really a very unique little girl. She's wonderful.
So good. Okay. And so you came home and you still love to go hiking. You still love to do spontaneous trips. You guys love to cliff jump. You guys love to go camping. You love to cave. And you found out that we were going on a caving adventure. And Ivy's on a PICC line at this point. And you were like, we're going to go. And so I was just curious. I want you to share the story and I want you to like, what like went on in your brain? Were you like, this is what I love to do. We're going to bring her along. Were you nervous about it? Was there anxiety, or you want to share your approach to that?
Yeah. So I'll paint the scene for you here. We're stuck in the hospital for 6 months in the middle of Vancouver City. Like, other than like the, terrible stuff that we're experiencing with Ivy, that is also like not so fun for us. Like that alone was like hard just to be in the city. Not living the life that we're used to, not being able to get out, not being able to be outside. So that kind of set us up for this like desperate desire to like do things. And so when we got out of the hospital, there was this kind of feeling of like, now's our chance. Like, we better, tomorrow we might be back in the hospital. Literally. Tonight, we might be back in the hospital. Literally. So we better get going because we need to go get this hike in. So that kind of jump started some of these desires back up again. We had them before, but really pushed us to do them anyways. And then another big piece, it's so interesting because I talk to a lot of medical moms who have so much fear, and I totally get it. I mean, it is terrifying. Watching your child nearly die is terrifying, and watching your child suffer and struggle and all the things that could be, and the trauma in your body and the hit that your body and your nervous system takes, experiencing all those things is so challenging. And then to push yourself to do other things, I totally understand. Not totally. What is so interesting though, is I had this one moment in the NICU where it was the most surrender moment I've ever had in my entire life. And I'll probably never get back there because as humans, we hold tightly to our children and how much we love them. But I had this moment sitting beside her bed where I thought, it was very early on. I think she was only a day or two old. And I just thought to myself, like, she's going to die. And I know that's just such an unhopeful thing to think. And it's like, I wish I could never have even thought that. But I really had this moment of like, she's going to die. This is horrible. Like this is like what I'm experiencing right now. This is probably how it's going to end. And having this like surrender moment of like, she's not mine. She is the Lord's, and just makes me cry. But it's just this, it was just this complete surrender of like, I can't do anything. And all I can do is pray, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to love her. And if you decide to take her, then that is what happens. And if you give her to me, I will trust you with my whole life tenfold, or I'll try. But it was just this complete surrender moment of like, this child is in the Lord's hands no matter what I do. No matter what, I can't do anything for her. I'm just going to watch, and I'm going to sit, and I'm going to love her, and I'm going to pray. And there is nothing else I can do. So there's one piece. And then, of course, the other side of you as a mom is just like full mama bear, like protect everything you can. I mean, the anxiety that you get, the fear, or like kind of that knowledge you get before something happens. I think that's all God-given intuition and wisdom. And that's a big piece. Like, I don't think people should forsake that and be like, oh, I'm just going to trust God and do the most dangerous possible thing ever. I think there's a balance. And so as we were going through some of these experiences, I think I was really like flip-flopping between the two of like lean into the surrender that the Lord has this child's life in your hands. No, nothing you're going to do is going to end this child's life before. I mean, the Lord has saved her, and he holds her, and she is hers. And then also like this like complete nervous system is like shot, and I'm like stressed, and I'm constantly like, there is no perfect medium, and there is no being in one camp. Like for me, there wasn't. I wish I could say I just forever lived in this perfect, peaceful, trust the Lord camp, but I didn't. It was just a flip-flop all the time. And so that was the other piece. So I'm desperate to get outside. I want to experience life. I know I could be back in the hospital tomorrow. Also, I have this surrender piece that I've experienced, this trust in the Lord that is so tangible for me in that moment, more tangible than it's ever been. And also then I obviously had, some worry and anxiety over her line, and I was managing all of those factors, and I was so excited to go caving with you. I remember when we found out about that, I was like, yeah, this is the thing we're going to go do. And we actually, I don't know if you remember this, but we had been in the hospital up until like Thursday before that trip, and we didn't know if we were going to make it to that trip. I was just looking back on pictures of this trip, and like my photo right before caving, I'm in the hospital with Ivy on like the bed. But yeah, so
That's so crazy.
yeah.
That's wild.
And then, we came to your place. Gage was a really good rock for me. He doesn't get as anxious as I do, and has a very strong sense of trust in the Lord. And he was a good rock for all this. But yeah, we came to your guys' house. We did her PICC line hookup. We unhooked her right before we went on our hike. And yeah, we went into the cave with her on a PICC line and took them. You had a baby too. I had a baby. We had another couple that had a baby, and we all went through with our babies. It was so fun.
Yeah. I remember you came and stayed the night, and so you showed us the whole PICC line setup, which was crazy. And you were just like, we get boxes of this mailed to our house, and all of this really expensive things from the hospital that you needed to, get her what she needed every night. And then, you unhooked her. We hiked into the valley for probably 2.5 hours. And then we went through a pinch point in this cave. We went in Cleft Cave, and there is a small point where you have to crawl on your stomach through it. And it was just like the babies, we just passed them through, all 3 babies. We kept going. Everyone had, I'm pretty sure we all had our helmets and our flashlights, and we got to the other side. You can see the valley. We have a photo of all of us there, and just such a crazy, beautiful story. But I think, part of it is your trust and trust in the Lord, and the mental game that you and Gage had. I think his maybe even life experience of just making decisions that, rep after rep of like, okay, we've done this before. We can do this again. This is what life was like before. We know how to do this now. We're adding a baby to it. And it was like, okay, we're going to make it back to Danica's house again tonight, or home, and we'll hook up the PICC line again. And yeah, it was really beautiful for us to watch too.
Yeah, we actually had another experience. This one is a little less like outdoor adventure, but we were going on a road trip through Arizona, and we were supposed to leave the night after her 2-week supply arrives, or the day after. And things were a bit tricky with the border. And so we couldn't just like cross back and forth as much as we wanted, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up, our shipment ended up being delayed, which has like never happened before. And we were like, what are we going to do? We only have 1 extra bag to get us through a delayment. And we were supposed to be crossing the border soon to get on our road trip. We were carpooling with people who were needed to leave. And I ended up having to drive all the way to like Nelson. So it comes through, it stops in Nelson, and then it keeps going through Cranbrook, and then it ships back from Cranbrook back to Creston. So it actually comes through Creston, but I can't get it off the truck. It has to get to Cranbrook, come back to Creston. So I was trying to intercept it like out in Nelson. And so I'm like on the phone with the company being like, I'm trying to figure out where your truck is. I'm trying to meet up with the truck. And they were like, anyways, we ended up being able to get the bags from them. And then I came straight home. Gage got home from work like an hour later, and we left and we crossed the border. And then we went on this Arizona trip, which was a big deal for me because we were in the States. And so obviously the insurance and the medical piece is like so much less available if her PICC line breaks or anything goes wrong. And obviously we had that lots, fever, I mean, tons of stuff. So for me, like caving and going into the States felt similar. And so it was all just, yeah. But I can recall so many memories. I can recall so many memories of like, here we go. Like, Lord, please be with us. Please help this not to be a bad decision. We're trusting you. We're moving forward. You know, as we saw things not going well, yeah, we pulled back. Like, we're not trying to be just like headstrong and completely thoughtless, but we also want to move forward and trust and not live in fear. And I think one thing that was also a big thing for me was I was on these groups with other medical moms or people who had experienced lots of pain in such ways. And one of the things that seemed very common between everybody was like, never again. Like they had had a kid that had something like this or worse or whatever. And it was like, never having another kid. I'm done. You know, I can't do this and I can't do this. And I totally understand. I don't want to like say that that's not valid because it is. It is. But this was my first child, and my dream for having a large family and living that life was like huge and ingrained in me. And so there was a piece of me that was like, don't think, get back on the horse. Like I remember I couldn't get pregnant again because I had a C-section with Ivy. And so I wanted to give it the right amount of time that the doctor had said, you know, for best healing and whatnot. But I remember being like, the second I hit 18 months, I have to just get pregnant because otherwise I'll never do it again. It will be way too terrifying. I can't think about it. I can't, you know, and there was a lot of like living life that way too, where it was like, I could either never leave my house, never go more than an hour from a hospital, never step my foot into the States, never do these things, or I have to just do it without thinking. A little bit of thinking, but not a whole lot, because otherwise it would never happen. There is too much anxiety and trauma and nervous system shut down in my body that if I really contemplate this too much, it's not going to happen. And I have to live life, and I want to live life, and I want to have more children, and I want to trust the Lord in these areas, and I need to just get back on the horse and keep moving. And so some of the hikes were kind of that. They were kind of just this, well, let's just do it because, you know, if we don't, we're never gonna. And that would be a shame because the world is beautiful and I want to experience it with other people. Is it so fun?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that was
good.
another big piece.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think that that's like a similar, well, I mean, not similar to anything that I can relate to, honestly, but I just think about when something small maybe happens to us or something scary happens to us and we have to kind of choose to face it or process it, and it's different for all of us. But that, I think that's really helpful and interesting to hear your journey of like, we're going to turn around and face this, and I'm just not going to think about it right now, and we're going to process it and have my support team as I keep going and go back to the things that you knew. Yeah.
And there was a lot of like figuring new things out. Like Ivy was bottle fed because I had pumped frozen breast milk. And so like dealing with that was like a whole new set of learning for like these hikes and overnight trips. And when I flew to Hamilton by myself with her, I brought a duffel bag of medical supplies. I brought a duffel cooler of frozen breast milk. I mean, this was all new to me. I remember like heating up these little snappies that I had pumped in that were frozen. I remember like heating them up in front of the car heater and being like, I wonder if this is like safe with the plastic or something. Like there was just so much like, I think that this is going to work. I hope this is going to work. I'd put it in the bottle. I'd give it to her. You know, she'd puke it all up. I'd be like, oh shoot, what now? Like there's just a lot of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a first time mom. I've not done any of this, let alone done it all this way first. And there was so much just like, what are we even doing? But also there would have been that at home too. I would have still had, you know, it's so interesting. You think being at home would like lower the nervous system issues. But even at home, I would be anxious. I would be nervous. I'd have the same kind of like adrenaline, cortisol, trauma in my body, all the systems struggling at home. And then when I was out on a hike, it was like all just the same. So it didn't really make that big of a difference. Sometimes it did. Some little things was like, okay, this is a little more stressful. But a lot of it was like, I'm stressed at home too. I just need to like lean into this moment of like moving forward, doing new things. Another motto that I did have, I remember telling myself so many times, do hard things, Frieda, do hard things. After getting home from the NICU, it was so hard. I think I had like this little bit of like a, what's that called? I want to say like a high. I've never been high. Anyways, but like a high of like, do hard things, like push. Like you are so much tougher than you feel like you are, and you need to push through these things. I remember standing at the top of a bridge in Creston. It's not even that high. It's 20 feet. I remember standing at the top and wanting to backflip off of it and being like, I can do this. If I can do the NICU for 6 months, are you kidding me? I can jump off of this like bridge. It's not that high. And I remember standing there backwards and being like, all you have to do is jump. That's it. The rest will all kind of, hopefully happen and you'll land probably, right? You just have to jump. And I've done a jump so many times in the last 6 months. I've jumped when I did cleft. I jumped when I stepped into the States. I've jumped in this way. I've jumped in that way. There are so many things that I've just, let's go. And so in that moment, I was just like, do hard things. And I just flipped. And I just remember being like, that was like a monumental moment in my head, not because it was a high cliff, but because it was this moment of like, I'm terrified. I can do hard things, do them. Let's go. Back I went. So anyways, that's another memory that really sticks with me for some of the getting over the NICU trauma and like getting through it and dealing with all the things that are happening in your body, because that stuff is, I think people forget that like your system is responding to trauma. So you have nervous system issues, you've got cortisol and adrenaline and all sorts of different issues that are affecting you. And I have so many stories of those things affecting me too. But I think that is such a huge piece when you talk about going outside with a kid with medical issues. It's not just like, are you scared to go outside? It's like, no, like your body is dealing with some real things and processing the trauma and like has different levels that you didn't used to have. And now you're trying to handle all that and then push yourself to take your child outside, go on hard adventures, So
Yeah,
that's just a big piece of it.
totally. It's just wild hearing this, that you have gone through all of this. As like, I remember the first year of parenting just being, the first child, you're just learning so much and it's so new, but then to have all of this go on top of it. Part of you doesn't know any different, but like it is just such a wild journey that you had to go through all of this and are still processing and learning and that journey. But one thing that I wanted to wrap back to was just, okay, so I know there's part of you that just pushed through and were like, you know what, I've got to get back up on the horse. But I know also that you are a researcher to some extent, or you do like want to know what's actually going on or like look at the facts and stuff like that. And so do you feel like, was there part of you, when you're like, okay, I have to go on a plane and there's a lot of sick people on the plane. Like, did you also like think about the facts of that or like, and work through that or research that? Or, were you on Facebook groups thinking about those kinds of things? Or did you mostly go to Gage and talk it through with him or, a counselor, just different things like that? I'm just curious if you had looked at it in any of those ways also.
Yeah, I did a lot of processing to Gage for like processing my experiences. And then when it came to like logistics of things, I learned a lot from Facebook groups. I wasn't like super active in terms of like processing and sharing on Facebook groups, but I did learn a lot from them, like just kind of being a fly on the wall in so many of these groups. I learned a lot about like logistics of like PICC lines and just dealing with stuff as you go and kind of just, encourage that other people are living their lives too. Like we're not all just hiding in home, doing nothing, waiting for our PICC line to break. Like people are out there living life. Kids are playing soccer, 10 years old on a PICC line, like not hooked up, obviously, but like living life. And so there was a lot of that kind of thing coming from the groups that I saw, and then logistics of dealing through things, figuring out like how to, travel with breast milk and travel with PICC line stuff and keep all my bags cool. And, how long can my bag be warm if it's still usable? If it's been, warm for too long, then it's not usable anymore. Now I'm out one bag. I only get shipped 15 bags a night. It's supposed to last me 14 days. And, just little things like that. And at one point we actually ran out of her blood thinner when we were in Hamilton during this like crazy time where she wasn't on her PICC line. And my sister's a pharmacist, and all the pharmacies were closed because it was a holiday. Whether I don't know if it was Christmas or Boxing Day or New Year's Eve, but it was a holiday, so everything was closed. And so my sister ended up finding like the one pharmacy in like all of Hamilton was like open for like another 30 minutes, and like called them and was like, "Do you have this on hand?" And they were like, "No, but I think we can get it somehow from the hospital." Or I don't know how it all went down, but she just like managed everything for us, and we ended up being able to go pick it up. But like lots of little logistic issues that were happening, and I'd often consult the Facebook groups and be like, what do I do in this situation? Or like, how long can this bag be warm for before I can use it? Because, your team in Vancouver at the hospital, they weren't just on 24/7 call. Like oftentimes you would just get a nurse practitioner and who would be very helpful, but sometimes simple questions could just be answered from the group. And yeah, is that kind of what you were asking?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Just thinking about the kind of the logical side of it also with thinking through the logistics of it. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that, Frieda. I think it will be insightful and I hope really encouraging for other moms listening and just maybe people that aren't going through that also just have a inside scoop onto what that looks like. Yeah. I'm just really encouraged that you shared your story. I would love to ask you our 3 questions that I ask all our guests that come on the Let's Go Outside podcast. And the first one is tell us your favorite moment outside with your kids.
Wow. Oh, do people actually have an answer for this? They can actually pinpoint the one single favorite moment?
It's a pretty hard
crazy
question for everyone.
It's crazy. I can't think of a specific, okay, I can think of lots of specific moments. Our trip to Arizona, that was amazing. We only had Ivy, and I was pregnant with Zadok. But we had some pretty amazing moments outside with her. And the cleft cave, like having the babies like pulled through that pinch point, like that's pretty cool and epic. But some of my favorite moments are when Ivy specifically points out or realizes or sees God's beauty in the world. I love that. Like when she'll be like walking and she'll be like, wow, look at that sky. God made that so beautiful. And she just does it so naturally. Like she just literally will like say stuff like that, or she'll say, I don't know, she'll just often like God is in her world completely. Everything is affected and related to God in her mind. And so it comes out very naturally and easy, but it's such a neat thing because of everything we've been through. It feels like just a complete moment when she reflects back on how beautiful God is or sees God in outside and in nature and in, something beautiful or something so cool. And she loves animals. She's got a frog outside in the bin right now she's taking care of. And she'll talk about God in all sorts of little things that even, I think of, but not really. And I think some of those moments are actually my favorite moments outside because there's just so much meaning in that. I don't know. But yeah, some of the more epic moments, like going through Cleft, that was pretty cool. Yeah, our trip to Arizona was really amazing. We've had lots of like hikes and then fires up in the woods that have been really neat. With the kids, fire building with the kids, camping, swimming. I mean, there's so many things. How could you ever pick a moment? But yeah.
That's so good. Okay, what's your favorite piece of gear as a mom?
And I'm not really a big gear person. I don't have a lot of gear. And yeah, I think I'm trying to think. I feel like the most useful thing I have gear-wise is just something to carry a kid in. Like, don't leave my house without my carrier. Every time I ever do that, it just seems like the biggest regret of my life. I'm always kicking myself. Why would I leave? Why didn't I just keep this thing in the car? So probably like a carrier.
Yeah.
But also I just want to say like, I've often felt like because I don't have like a lot of gear, I'm like not super outdoorsy or like I can't like meet the same standard as all these other people who are just like doing these like super cool things. But I just really want to emphasize how much you like don't need gear to get outside. And I love that about like you and your podcast. Like you'll be like, yeah, get outside every day. And it's like, you're not hiking these crazy mountains every day. You're literally going for walks with your kids every day. And like how important that is. And I just think that's so cool because I'm not super big into gear and we're tight on money. And so we don't buy all these different things, but I can still get outside and I can still do such fun things and rent or borrow from people or buy, a few things that we do have. Our chariot stroller is awesome. We love that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, totally. I love that. I am a big advocate of used gear, use what you have. I didn't even know about the baby sleeping bag, the Morrison outdoor sleeping bags until I had my second, I was pregnant with my 3rd kid. So I am also not a big gear person. I'm not always in there, but I do really admire the people that do know those things and research that stuff. But I think, so it's even helpful to hear that from you, Frieda. So it's good. You can get outside and you can still do those things. I'm very big believer in that.
Yeah.
Okay. If anyone wants to connect with you further, Frieda, do you have a way that you would be willing to connect or hear from someone? Or do you have any words of encouragement as we end out?
Yeah, you can. So I've got Instagram, Frieda Drax, I think.
Well, I'll put it in the show notes for you.
Yeah, put it in the notes. And the Daily Draxler show is it's a little bit archived. I don't really use it anymore, but it was kind of my journey through the NICU. So if you're interested in seeing more videos and I did room tours and I did like question and answers and I did all sorts of things and kind of just followed Ivy's 6 months in the hospital and then a little bit after. And then I kind of slowed down on Instagram with that. But the Daily Draxler show, if you link that, that's kind of a fun thing to take a look at. And then, I don't know, encouragement. I just love your podcast, Danica. That's actually what I want to say. I like your podcast. I listen to episodes. I love your videos. And more than anything, I love going on adventures with you. I feel like it's so fun. I'm a huge adventure with people person.
Yeah.
You will not catch me in the woods by myself. I love the woods. I love camping. I love everything outdoors with people.
Yeah.
I'm big on the with people.
That's something. I wasn't meaning encouragement for me, but I love that. Thank you so much for pumping me up.
That's what I thought of.
Okay. Let's end on that note because it was a great note. Okay. Thank you so much, Frieda, for coming and sharing your story.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm glad that this finally worked out.
Yay. I just want to say thank you for being here. If it sparked something in you or made you think of a friend, would you please send it their way? Word of mouth is everything for this growing little podcast community, and I'm super grateful for everyone sharing. So, like always, I've dropped all the links of the places